Just so everybody knows, good morning, everyone. This is Kim Buchelman and Samantha with First American Title. We are definitely having a computer glitch. So my computer is not showing the PowerPoint program that you're looking at, but I'm going to follow along in my manual that will go along with that. You'll hear Samantha. She's going to be prompting me along again because I'm not sharing the same screen. So I apologize right up front. I think this is a whole new world for myself. I know that as far as all these Zoom meetings. I've sat in on many. This is the first time I am hosting one, and with that comes computer problems this Monday morning. So welcome to all. Sam will see if you have questions you can put in the chat box, or if you raise your hand, feel free to jump in anytime. This is kind of just an intro when you receive your title report of what to look for, some red flags. I want to thank Lindsay and everyone at NSGCAR for inviting us to the program here. They are your hosts. We're going to just jump right in. And then you guys stop me.
One quick, sorry, Kim. I just wanted everyone to know that Shirley emailed everyone this morning with a sample preliminary title report. I think my screen's glitching, but if you can see it, and I can change that. But anyway, she emailed everybody with one, so you guys have a PDF of that, and you're more than welcome to keep that, review it, and then we can also send you a hard copy if needed. So that was all.
Okay, so with that, should we just dive in? And are we on page one, the front of the...
Sorry, Kim, one more thing. Sorry, Shirley just let us know that if you guys do have any questions, please just go ahead and type it into the chat box, because there's no raising hands on here. So it's just type into the chat box. I'm monitoring it, so I can always pause Kim and we can answer questions along the way.
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
just stop me. Anyone stop me anytime. We'll go ahead and dig in. First of all, we'll start with the agents. When you get your listing, and we are always willing at First American to do a pre-open. That way we can get the title report started, get a head start on any red flags for you. Because once you go into escrow, obviously the clock is ticking. You have the time frames on your contract for all to follow. So we are always happy to do that and get the title report started. So on the cover page, it will be who orders the title report. It will have your name on it up in the upper left hand. So we'll start with B there. That'll be just your name. The order number, we obviously go off of an order number. It's nice if you have it when you call us. If not, we understand. We can always track it by the property address as well. But we will always reference an order number. Title officer, we have 3 excellent title officers, Bonnie Stark, Corey Mulvey, and Dave Smith. It will have their name of which title unit Sam or I opened that in, or your escrow officer. You'll see their phone number and the title unit email. That will always be on the cover. You don't have to go through me or Samantha. You are always welcome to call them direct. They are very hands-on with you. And that title unit email, it addresses their whole unit. Each unit has 2 to 3 assistants. That way it's just not one set of eyes seeing it, but that is the email address. Most of the time, I will say our clients go through us, but just know that you at any time, or your clients, buyers, sellers, they have questions, can also call at any time. It doesn't go to a front switchboard or anything like that. If we're doing a pre-open, of course, it won't have the buyer's name yet. But when you get your title report, this may sound silly, but make sure that the property address is right. There have been times we might open 123 Main Street, and then for whatever reason, the property address is wrong. Or if it's just an APN number for vacant land. So always confirm when you get the report that it is the actual property that you have listed. We can go to, that's pretty simple stuff right there, but that's just the cover page for you. If we go to the next page, it's my page 5. It starts with H, it's the date. That date is important because, like I said, if we do a pre-open, it's going to be the date that report was created, which, you know, a listing could, we hope they don't for you, but if it sits for 30 days, 45, 60 days, that date does become important, because when you do finally go to escrow, we will do what we call a date down, because a lot can happen when during that listing period. Let's say a lien was put on there or something like that. So the date of the report does matter, and we will keep it updated. When you are in escrow and it gets to the day where escrow calls to set it up to record, we do another date down. We make sure that while you were in escrow, nothing else happened throughout the transaction. Again, liens, anything like that. When something is filed at the last minute, nobody likes last minute things, but it does happen, especially in a maybe, let's say, a divorce situation or something like that. Somebody decides to slap a child support lien or just something to wreck and postpone the transaction. So there's a couple times throughout the process where we update the file. So that is the date. The different policies. First American, we have an Eagle policy. We as First American have the most coverages pre and post, meaning if something were to happen after the close of escrow, maybe an encroachment, a neighbor builds a RV garage or something that encroaches on your property. So those are the different coverages and the best policy out there. A standard policy covers vacant land and rental properties, meaning there's no one living on the site itself. So that is where a standard policy comes in. You don't ever have to request the two. I believe your contract always calls out for the best policy, which again is the Eagle policy. I think, or maybe you don't know as far as who pays for what. The seller always pays, or almost always, unless special circumstances or it calls it out differently in your contract. The seller pays for the buyer's title insurance. The only time the buyer has a title fee is if they are getting a loan, which is probably the majority of the time. If they're paying cash, they don't have a title fee. A lender, of course, wants a policy as well. If they're going to be loaning money, they want to be insured as well. So that is where a buyer will pay for their lender's policy, called the Alta Concurrent. We do have rate books. Of course, our rates are posted with the state. Rates, they are what they are. There are no special discounts for friends or family or anything like that. We are filed under the insurance commissioner, and we must go off those rates. That's a different thing. If you ever want a copy of that, most of the time people just either ask your escrow officer or us if you're comparing title coverages and policy fees. Our whole industry is very competitive. We're very just a few dollars off from each other. So that's the different policies. One very important thing too, when you receive your email, and title reports will of course always be emailed to you in a link that has all the items, meaning the CC&Rs, if there's a road maintenance agreement, that will all be built into a link that you will be sent. If you ever want hard copies, and some people still do, don't ever hesitate to ask. We're happy to do that for you. It's just not standard procedure. But when you do receive your title insurance prelim, also confirm, just like I said, confirm the address, the name. Make sure that if you took a listing with Betty Smith, that it is Betty Smith on your contract and who matches the title, the prelim. If you get it and then there's additional names, maybe you just, it's a husband and wife, but you see a third name. Maybe they forgot that mom co-signed for them and was on the deed when they bought it 20 years ago. So always make sure, because if there's additional names on there, that is a concern or something we're going to have to address, of course, because they will now have to be a party to your contract. Or if someone is deceased or something like that. So all those things are very important. That's what title insurance is for. Our main job is to pass clear title, and in order to do that, anybody on title, and we go off of the last current vesting deed is going to have to sign or sign off, or we will have to know if they are no longer with us. So again, name is very important. A fee, as you know, just means that it's fully transferable. You probably learned that in your real estate class. A legal description will always be attached at the end of a prelim. It's typed on grant deeds or attached, but that is what we go off of, is a legal description to describe the address. Taxes. This will show up front the current status, if they are delinquent, if they're due just meaning that, you know, they're due, they're not owed yet, or it'll say open if it's not tax time yet. So that is just the payment. You'll see later on in the prelim where it gets to the full amount of the assessed value of the property. So before we go on to the next page, I guess, Sam, I can't see the screen, so if we want to click over to the next page. Are we all looking at lien of supplemental taxes? Is that the page we're on, Sam? Okay, I just want to make sure. My book matches what our PowerPoint. Okay.
I just want to make sure page 7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, page 7. So supplemental taxes, we get lots of questions about that, and that is something you should know, especially if you're representing the buyer, that they could, your buyers, when they move in, receive a bill down the road for supplemental taxes. If the previous owner lived there for 20 years, or let's say it was vacant land and they built on it, obviously the assessed value is going to be higher than it was when the previous owners owned it. So most likely, the assessor's office will come out and they're going to reassess the value of it, and that will trigger a supplemental tax. Because in escrow, buyer and sellers are paying their taxes, but according to, you know, the last day that the seller, they'll be prorated, the last day that the seller owns it to the day that the new owner takes over. So note that if they receive a supplemental bill, that is probably the reason. And they can always, we get a lot of phone calls about it, but of course they can always call the assessor's office to make sure what it's about if they have questions. CC&Rs will always be in the report as well. That's, you know, covenants, conditions, restrictions that a builder puts on for that development when they build it. If there's HOA and all of that that comes about, we don't cover that in the, you won't see that in the prelim. That is something when you go to escrow, typically there's a management company that handles the HOA. They will, escrow, will order the HOA documents for your buyers to review. And sometimes the seller has the information, and it's always good to ask if you're listing, taking the listing, so that you are aware of the HOA. So when you have potential buyers and agents calling, that you know what that includes. We, like Sam and I, a big request we get, especially up here in our territory, we cover the 78 corridor, which includes Valley Center, Bonsall, Fallbrook, kind of all the backcountry areas as well. So we get a lot of questions about zoning. We don't cover zoning in a title report. That's information that comes from the county, or if it lies within the city. And people want to know, you know, if horses are allowed, and if so, how many. Ag questions that we get. That is information that, again, is not in this title report, but that we can help you get that from the county or the city. And that is something you'll want to know. Or if you're working with buyers buying vacant land, ask them, you know, like what are their intentions? What do they plan on doing with this? And, you know, if they want a llama farm, well, maybe horses are allowed, but not llamas. Or maybe horses are allowed and they want 10, but this only allows for 2. You know, those are things that you want to make sure that they're getting the property of what their dream is and what they want to do with that. So the more questions, the better, always. So that's CC&Rs kind of versus HOA and all of that. An easement, so now I'm on number 5, which is Q, the red Q. Easements for utilities, you will almost always see those on your prelim. You want to see easements for utilities, phone lines, all of that. You especially want to see easements for access to make sure. If there is a property that has lack of access, we will call that out. I mean, if we don't see that there was ever a deed recorded for access to the property. And we get a lot of that. I mean, you can have physical access all day long. Maybe they've been driving that road for 10 years. It doesn't always mean that back in the day when that was created, maybe parcels were split, that there was legal access created. So that's very, very important. That can be a definite hang up. A lender will not lend unless there is legal access. So we don't ever want to see that in a title report. And I think somewhere down further as we go along, we'll see an example of that. Easements mean there's burdening easements and there are benefiting easements. Benefiting easements is when you get your title report, you will receive plotted easements. If there are easements to be plotted, First American, you never have to ask for them. I know some companies you do have to request them. They will be there if there are easements to be plotted. Benefiting easements mean that it is the benefit to you, the person living there, meaning the road that gets you to your property. Anything outside of your property lines is a benefiting easement to you, and that's where some of the utility easements and things can be. Burdening easement means that easement lies within your property line, and you'll see on plotted easements in a report, your property is always outlined in red, and then the other easements are little dotted lines and they're color coded, and the color code will be on the sidebar explaining what they are, and they match to the deed that created it. Burdening isn't a bad thing, it just means it lies within your property lines. So it'll make more sense, you know, as you get more familiar with the report when you see the easements. And it's very telling. I mean, it's a good glance of what lies within your property lines. But that's the difference between benefiting and burdening. Number 6 are deed of trust. If the owner has any loans on the property, it will show their current deeds of trust, whether they have 1 loan or 2. Again, this is very, very important to review when you receive your prelim, because if if the seller tells you that they have 1 open loan, and then we get the report and you're the 2 deeds of trust, that's going to be a little bit of a red flag or a question. It could be an equity line. Lots of times that second is an equity line. Sometimes people have them. It doesn't mean they have that they owe anything on it. Maybe they took out an equity line when they got their first deed of trust, and it just seemed like a good idea in case they needed money somewhere down the road, but they never drew on it. But that's where escrow comes in as well. When an escrow officer receives her prelim, she goes through it and she sees what matters is she going to need to take care of. And that means requesting demands for payoff from these deeds of trust, or if there's liens or anything like that. So make sure when you receive it, if they told you they only have 1 loan, but you see a couple of them on there, that's going to be a question for them. We want to make sure. We don't see a lot of them in today's world. Well, today's world has changed in the last month, but as far as short sales, you want to make sure that they're, from what you're listing it and what they owe, that there's enough gap in there for all the fees and that they're going to have prior to close of escrow. So that's a deed of trust. You'll see the little notice of default mentioned there. If you see that, of course, that is a red flag as well. Typically, the seller will know if they have a notice of default, but they don't always share. You know, if they have things going on, maybe that's their reason to sell, but sometimes it can be a surprise. When the bank, whether it be 30 days, 90 days, usually typically 90 days, I believe, is when they will issue a notice of default. And that doesn't mean you can't move forward with the sale. Usually there's a window of time, and especially if the seller lets their bank know that they have listed it, the bank is always willing to postpone that. They don't want to go to sale and go through the whole court process if they don't have to either. The next phase after a notice of default is a notice of trustee sale. If we see that recorded, now we do have a ticking clock, I should say. On a notice of trustee sale that is recorded, there is a date on there of the date that it is going to the courthouse steps for bid, for auction. That also can be postponed if they know that it's listed or in escrow. So again, it's not a horrible thing, but just know that it definitely puts time constraints on your transaction. And then if it does not sell at a courthouse sale, then that's when it goes into foreclosure and back to the bank. And by that time, once it's gone back to the bank, you wouldn't be listing it anyway. So now that it's gone, again, back to the bank. So I don't know if that makes sense. I'm starting to get redundant maybe on the whole deed of trust thing, but I guess my main point is make sure when you get the report to see how many of those we're going to be concerned with paying off. I am done with this. Yes?
Hey, can you hear me? So we do have one question about lease solar, and they're asking why that shows up on a report.
So different solar companies, especially if you, oh, my mind just went blank. If it's a UCC filing, that means they have taken a position just like a lender, and they file it against the property. You know, solar liens can be, sometimes it's just a contract that an owner signs with them. But a lot of the solar companies, they agree, or the seller agrees when they take that out, that they are filing, and it's a loan. It's just like somebody taking out a second, and it cannot transfer property. You cannot transfer unless that is taken care of. Taken care of meaning they pay it off through escrow, or if they don't have the funds to do that, or they don't want to do that, a lot of times solar is negotiated through your contracts. So you as listing agent, buying agent, that's just part of negotiations, whether the seller's going to be paying that off. If the buyer's going to be assuming it, that just adds another thing that if they're getting a loan, that their loan officer is going to want to know, because that becomes a part of their ratios if they can afford to do so. Secondly, the solar company, the buyer, the new buyer, has to be approved by the solar company, because you know now it's a different borrower. So there's a couple steps that comes with that if there is a solar lien against the property. And again, it has to be taken care of. You cannot transfer a property against that. So it just depends on the solar company if they attach a lien to the property or not. And we see it a lot. Solar is a big thing on prelims these days and can create a problem if all parties don't agree to who's going to be paying that off, because it is treated as a loan. I don't know if that answered the question.
It looks like, I think you did a good job on that. We have one more question. Yeah, she said it was great. If a lender is approved, are all lease solar assumable through escrow?
Repeat that, I'm sorry, Sam.
And I'm reading it right now. If a lender is approved, are all leased solar assumable through escrow?
Yes, typically. Yes. So that's just kind of part of one of the functions of escrow is negotiating that. And I don't know the exact process if escrow sends the paperwork to the solar company, or if that is done just between buyer and seller, and if the agent assists with that. I don't, unfortunately, I'm sorry, know who handles that, but it does have to be addressed.
Okay,
so,
yeah,
it does have to be approved.
That's why it didn't make sense, because it was the borrower approved. I was like, So yeah, if the borrower is approved, okay.
If the borrower is approved. So they have to be approved by the solar company and through their loan officer, you know, just like the loan officer approving them, and it becomes just like they weigh in everything, their income and their debt and all of that, that becomes part of it, because that is a bill, it's a debt.
All right.
So they have to make sure that they're approved financially. So That
Okay.
answered
And I think I already
that.
went over to the next page, so.
Okay, page 9. So a statement of information, we call it an SI. That is going to be something that we require from all sellers. What that means is it's a form that they receive through escrow. You as the listing agent can also provide that to them. It's a one-page thing, and I realize you have a lot of contracts for them to sign and signatures, and then with this COVID-19, I think there's 6 new contracts in the last 2 weeks that have come out. So we're not saying that this is your responsibility, but even if you just mention it to them that they will be receiving the statement of information and they will have to sign it and get it back to us. A lot of people don't like filling it out because it's personal information, it's their social security number, if they're married, how many times. Why we need it as a title company, we not only clear the property of all liens and encumbrances and things like that, we have to clear the people's name as well, especially, you know, if it's a common name, if it's Dave Smith. There's a lot of Dave Smiths in the world. We need to make sure that it is the correct Dave Smith. And that is what this form does, because it'll have a middle name that can distinguish between the two, the spouse's name, obviously the social. If somebody's really giving flack about filling that out, we'll take the last 4 digits and just know that we run it and it's gone. We don't keep it, we don't share it, it goes nowhere. And it's really just, again, if somebody owns multiple properties, if we're running the property address, but let's say they have a lien on another property that they own, we're going to find that by running their name, and that is the importance of this. And the sooner we get it, the better, because a lot of times people hold off on filling this out and getting it to us. We run it, and sure enough, those are typically the ones that there's a problem, and that's probably the reason they didn't want to fill it out in the first place. But we do require it, and we will not move forward without it. We don't require it on buyers. Some companies do. It's because we're not clearing the buyer. If they approve for the loan and the house and all of that, we don't care if they have baggage. That doesn't mean anything to us. We're clearing the property and making sure that the new people aren't inheriting any loans or liens that came with that property. When they get it, it's clean. Their new stuff, their new loan will go on the title policy at that time. So hopefully that makes sense as far as what the SI is for and why we need it. It has saved many transactions. When I do a class in person, I give a lot of examples, all of that. If we have time, you know, at the end, a lot of times scenarios sink in more so than you just hearing my voice and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But it has, by an SI, it has saved several transactions that I've even seen and been involved with. When a wire goes out on a payoff at the end of the transaction, we've had them stopped midair through the National Reserve if somebody was on a national hit list and they didn't allow that wire to go through. But because we had the SI, we were able to distinguish between the two, and I believe it had to do with a common name between the two. And once we knew it wasn't the one on the national hit list, we were able to let that wire go through and complete the transaction. So there are reasons for it. We wouldn't request it unless it really meant something. So that's an SI. Let's see, I think, where are we? On U. So that's the annual taxes. I mentioned before, you saw the first part on the first page, the taxes that are due and the installments. This is the annual tax. And again, this will change probably because it will be reassessed for higher or lower, what have you, but it is reported there. I think I already explained to you the different loan policies or title policies. This just talks about an alpha loan policy. The lender, the new lender, will be requiring a title report, which is ordered in the beginning when it goes to escrow, and it will go out with the other prelims. So if that makes sense, we can move on to the next page, which is with the little policeman. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So if there are any other types of liens other than just the deed of trust, the loan, or the solar, or what have you, these are probably the most important we need to pay attention to, because they're probably going to take the longest to clear. A mechanic's lien, that's probably the most popular thing that can pop up during a transaction, especially if there's repairs and things being done to the home. And let's say the seller decided they weren't happy with the work, or for whatever reason they didn't pay that contractor. The contractor, up until the day before recording, can slap a mechanic's lien on that. That is why in the beginning, when I mentioned we do what we call a date down, we make sure at the last minute before we set it up with the recorder's office that such a thing has not taken place. If there is any kind of notice of action or a court action, we need to get releases from the court to show that that has been removed. If it's something ongoing, any kind of lien that's part of an escrow function too is to send out a request for demand, just like we do on a deed of trust. If there's back HOA liens, let's say, you know, the clock is ticking, and a lot of times there's penalties and things like that. So that is something your escrow officer is doing throughout her job and task on a file, is to make sure anything filed against the property before we close, that we have the final payment that we're going to satisfy everybody in order to, again, give clear title. A bankruptcy, if it's in bankruptcy, it won't be selling anyway. I mean, that's going to hold up the transaction. Or sometimes if they own multiple properties, a court will issue and release this property that you've listed and it's in escrow. They'll release it from the bankruptcy. So that just means that they'll go ahead and let this house sell. It doesn't mean the bankruptcy is over for that seller. But again, dealing with the courts take a while. Make sure if you see anything like this in your prelim that you've allowed enough time in your transaction to allow for these types of things, because these are definitely things that will postpone or delay closing for you. The effect of a deed, you'll see a lot of that in prelims today. An uninsured deed means a deed that is recorded outside of an escrow, means it's not insured. It didn't go through an escrow process or transaction. That just means you or that anybody can walk into the recorder's office and record a deed. And most of the time it's people adding someone, taking somebody off, things like that. Sometimes it's going in a trust, out of a trust. Many, many reasons why there are uninsured deeds. We take a look at that real closely now, and we will require something called an affidavit of uninsured deed if we see that. And all we're doing is we're making sure that the person that was maybe taken off of title, deeded out of title, that they meant to come off of title, that they have no financial gain in this anymore. So we will request, and again, this is a process function that an escrow officer will prepare that document, the affidavit, meaning, you know, for example, you know, especially you can kind of see the chain. If it's from family to family, we can see, okay, it just went from, you know, maybe child to parents, parents to child, things like that. But if it's completely different names, if it was just Kim Buchelman deeded to Samantha Bianchi for no monies exchanged, that's rare. Most people aren't just giving their house away for free. So it's really looking for fraudulent deeds out there. And it's the reason we do it and every other title company. During the last foreclosure period, there was a lot of that where people were in trouble, and these companies came along and said, Mr. and Mrs. Owner, we see you're financially struggling. If you sign your deed to us, we will take care of this for you. And so many people don't understand what that means by just signing your deed over. It seems like maybe a simple process, but instead they just gave their house away. So that's sort of when uninsured deeds and affidavits of uninsured deeds came into existence, and what that means. So if you see that, the effect of a deed, we want to know what was the effect, what was the reason for it. So it's just, again, just little inquiry. It's why you have title insurance. We're making sure all these things are taken care of for you, for your buyer. Obviously, if something happens after the close of escrow, you as the agent representing them will probably get the first phone call. So we're protecting you as well. There's that lack of access. If there's something where when our engineers were creating the easements, the plotted easements, and if they're not finding a deed that was ever created that gave access to that property, you will see those words. And you don't want to see those words because it just created a big problem for all of us, because now we have to find or get engineering, somebody out there to create that legal description. And it usually takes a lot of bodies to do that. One scenario I'll just quick give you, because people get themselves into these situations. There was an owner that had, if you can picture a, let's say, triangle, and he owned all 3 properties. He built his home at the top of that triangle. At some point in time, he sold off the other 2, which abutted to the street, was down below. He forgot to reserve himself an easement. He was the property at the top and didn't really think much about it because he owned all 3 properties on that little tiny street. Well, the problem came when he sold those and didn't reserve himself an easement. He then, I think, gifted the home to his children. They went to get do a refi, and the inspector that went out there did his homework and realized they didn't have access. And it just created a problem. And it's just one of those oversights that took place when people start splitting parcels, dividing. If you're the back piece of property on that street, you need access through every other home between you and the street. Legal access means right to the last county maintained road. So it's, unless you have, and you'll see it when you get more familiar maybe with looking at plotted easements, there's that little dotted line from wherever your house is on the street to that road. If you're right up against the street, it's the neighborhood in your home and sidewalk and driveway, or right up to the street, it's not a big deal. It's created when the builder created it. I'm talking more rural properties with different parcels that can get split over time. Excuse me, take a sip of water here. But that lack of access, that's sort of what that means. I don't know if there's any more questions on that.
Nope.
Oh, okay. Yes, no, I'm sorry.
No, I said we're good to go.
Okay.
No question.
Okay, and then statement of information we already covered, that's F. The reason it's on this page with the little police officer is because, like I mentioned before, if we don't get that and we get it at the last minute and there's problems, now we just put a delay into our transaction. We can go on to the next page, the legal description. So again, that will, the engineers that create this is what defines the property. This is what we are insuring, the legal description that is attached to this property. Also, at the back of every prelim will be the plat map. That's what is created when the developer goes in, breaks down all the parcels, creates it. You'll see the number. Are we looking at a plat map, Sam?
Now we are.
Okay, so the plat map.
Yes.
The number, there's lots of numbers and measurements. The dimensions are, you'll see the little footage, the numbers within. That's the square footage of the lot itself. The number that's in the little circle, that's your parcel number. So if you look at a parcel, an APN number, the last 2 digits represent that number. So that's something too, you know, if your APN number ends in 17, you can look at a plat map if you're interested in that and see, okay, yes, it's the 4th house in or something like that. But that's just something I'm just pointing out to you. Doesn't mean a whole lot other than just kind of fun to know, I guess, that the last 2 digits on your APN number is that number in the circle. If there's ever 2 more digits after that last dash, usually it's 00. If there's ever 2 more after, that typically means it's a condo, and it describes that condo. So that's a plat map that will be with every prelim you receive. And then there's always just the jacket, just the boilerplate coverages and all of that comes in every single prelim.
No,
I don't know this. Go ahead.
no, sorry. It's just that the PowerPoint is a little different than the booklet. So there are some pages with questions and whatnot on there, but we can always send that out to you guys as well, just so they have it. But I'm just going to keep going along with what the book has, so we're on the same page as you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, just so
Well,
everyone's.
I
One of the glitches.
one of the glitches, yeah. So let me see here if I can. Okay. So one thing I'll touch on. Okay. So I just came to the page. Like, okay, we talked about red flags. I think we covered notice of default, power of attorney, or excuse me, short sales, power of attorneys. Yeah, this is something that I was going to touch on, and trust. When you get your or take the listing, if you know that they are in a trust, and let me back up real quick here, because a lot of times if you're new to, there's so much terminology in this business. The difference between a property profile and a preliminary title report, prelim, PR, there's so many names for it. When you're going on your listing appointment, I know you can pull the property information yourself. There's so many apps and things and that you have access to, but don't ever hesitate to ask us for a property profile. That will provide you with comps as well, but that'll show you, so you're prepared when you go on your listing appointment, who the parties are. That's going to show you, going back to vesting, when I said make sure whoever is on that last deed is who is going to be on your contract, and it can pull that. Property profiles and anything that we create are from our farming department. All of that is a service to you. We don't charge for that information. It's all free to you. And even opening a pre-open. We are willing to do that. We realize through negotiations, you may not end up with First American Title. Maybe the transaction is going concurrent with another home, and that title insurance is already, or prelim is already open with somebody else. We get that. It's a cost of doing business, but it does give you a little bit of control, saying you already have a prelim with First American, and again, it gets a jump start on previewing and tackling problems if there are any. But when you get that, if you know, or when you're talking with the sellers, if they're in a trust, we will need a copy of the trust. If the parties, if it's just a husband and wife, and there is a surviving party in that trust, that's fine. If now the two are both deceased and you're dealing with the children, we will need a copy of that trust. There's usually one person kind of in charge, the successor trustee, but if there's multiple siblings out there, those are the ones that we need to be concerned with, and our job is to make sure that all parties agree to sell. We know life isn't perfect like that. So anyways, know that we will need that. Same with a power of attorney. If somebody is ill or incapacitated and there's a power of attorney, these are all things we're going to be concerned with and need the proper documentation in order to proceed. So just be aware and ask questions, of course, as we go along. Of what we will require. Yes.
So we have someone that asked, what if the trust has missing pages to it?
Usually we need the declaration. The most important page we need is who it calls out to be. Is it a single person? Is it, if it names 4 siblings? And so, we'll take that as a case by case. A lot of times we like the full trust, but really, and people do get funny about that. I understand it's personal, but we truly aren't looking to see jewelry. I mean, we don't care about people's other personal belongings. All we care about is the real estate part of that and who has the authority to sell. And if there's missing pages, this and that, I mean, we work through it when we have situations. Every file is different. That's one thing you will learn as well. Every transaction is different and has a story. No two are the same. And that's why never be afraid to ask your title person, your escrow officer, especially if you're brand new. Let them know you're brand new. Let them know you're going to have questions, because sometimes I think as an escrow officer, they don't want to assume that you know or feel like they're telling you how to do your job, so they may not tell you what's needed or the questions to ask. So there are never any silly questions in this business, because as long as I've been doing this as well, I mean, there are questions I get where I've just never even heard of that scenario before. And even out in the field, Sam and I, we get a lot of questions that we're able to answer. But if I'm ever 1% unsure of myself, or just a kind of a nagging question in my head, I never have a problem saying I have no idea, or let me make sure with this, and I will call one of my title officers to confirm with us on that. So if there are missing pages on the trust or things like that, we work through it. You know, as long as we can tell and see the chain and see what's intended. Sometimes it requires, if we've had to go back to the attorney that drew the trust. So it gets complicated, it gets time consuming when there's missing links and missing information, but it's our job to uncover all that. So we do our best to work through it in a timely fashion. But again, the more we know up front and that, you know, we can all take care of, we can jump on it together. So we're not doing it, you know, 2 days before closing when everybody's anxious. So I don't know if that answers the question in a long roundabout way.
Yes, I think it did.
Okay. Okay.
Did you want to go over anything else before? Because right now we're on the exceptions and exclusions page, but is there any other points to cover before moving on?
No, I don't think so. I know. So I'm up on the entities page, but
okay.
Let's see. Tell me, where am I? Power of attorney, notice of default, red flags. So did we do power of attorney? We already kind of talked about trust, probate. Speaking of probate, if there are no parties alive, if somebody is not in a trust and that last person is deceased, and the son or whoever is handling the transaction and the vesting was not in a trust, there's nothing showing us that the son has the right to sell this. That's a probate situation, which takes a while to go through the whole probate process of who has the right to sell. So if they're not in a trust and they're just in joint tenancy and now both parties are deceased, you are in a probate situation, and that's going to take a while. Not that you can't take that listing, but just know that there's going to be some time involved there to go through the court system on who has the right to sell that property. Are we at the withholdings and exchanges?
I'm just at the beginning I'm still on the, let me get my screen back up and running, because we're just going through what page are you on the booklet?
This is no longer in the booklet. I was done with the booklet. I'm kind of at the end of the PowerPoint. I pulled the PowerPoint up on my.
Oh, good. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just was able to pull it up on my iPad, so I'm working off two different things here. So
okay.
If we get to the back of the presentation after the red flags, okay. And then we kind of already talked about notice of default and short sales.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. We have two different things going, so. Trust and probates.
Power of attorney.
Okay, withholdings and exchanges.
Yep. So we covered the power of attorney, the trust and probates. We talked about withholding and exchanges. Withholdings, and again, this is something escrow will do, that they send out at the close of escrow if somebody's living abroad and all of that, and the gains. I don't get into all of that as far as property gains and all of that. Know that we do have, if it's an exchange, a 1031 exchange, First American Title does have an exchange accommodator. It does not, if you have us for title, it does not need to be through us, but that's something that your escrow officer, she pretty much handles the exchange portion of that along with the accommodator. So that's really nothing you or I need to be real concerned with. She handles that and knows where the funds are going, how much, and even if it's a concurrent closing, that obviously is set up through escrow also. So if you are representing the seller and then they're making a purchase with their funds from their sale. That can be set up obviously through the escrow officer who sets it up with us, and we wire their funds, their proceeds to their next transaction, regardless of what company it is or that. So that's just a little bit about exchanges. The next one is entities. And if somebody is in an LLC or a partnership, just like a trust, we will need to see who the parties are, who the entities are, who makes up that corporation. So we will need those pages as well to see who the signers are if they are in an LLC. We will need that paperwork. So again, our role is to always just make sure that we, when we record a new deed for new ownership, that it transferred properly, that all parties who had a vested interest in it were signers that signed the deed over to the new buyers. I guess the last page is conclusion. And again, I think I already said it. There are never too many questions. The more questions you ask, the more we're all on the same page. Don't ever hesitate throughout your transaction. I'm CC'd a lot in the files from start to finish, but I like that, keeps me in the loop. I don't feel like you have to do that. I'm just saying don't ever hesitate to reach out and ask questions on any red flags or anything that doesn't look right. One thing too I'll mention, so when we open an order for you, Samantha and I, when the prelim goes out, we also receive a copy. We like to do our prelim reviews. We try to get to all of them. I'm sure some scoot by us, but we review them and we look for these red flags for you. We'll shoot you an email or a phone call and just say, hey, are you aware there's a solar lien? Are you aware there's a child support lien? And just bring to you the things that might come into play and matter and take some time to clear up. When I review a prelim, if you're representing the buyer, I look at it as if I were the buyer. What would interest me? What do I not understand in this? What looks funny or whatever? So we're always happy to be a party to that. I have walked buyers, sellers through their reports. I don't have a problem doing that. So again, utilize us, make us a part of your team. We're like a free assistant to you, and happy to do so. Let's see. I guess, unless I missed something, Sam, or there's more questions. I know that's a lot of information. I know this is a whole different way of teaching a class. It's not face-to-face and all of that, but I have a feeling it's going to be our new norm for a little bit until this all clears up, and who knows where this is all going. I know there's been some great classes, the chit chat classes that the board has offered. There was one on Friday, I believe, and just, wow, the things, the new rules and everything and tasks that it has put up on you when you go for a listing or to go show a property, all the new contracts and all of that. So knowledge is everything. We're learning during this new environment just as you are. But we are fully up and running. We have, a lot of staff, of course, working from home, but our offices, our main title branch downtown in Mission Valley, the units are still there, and we've let our employees, we've given them that choice if they're more comfortable working from home, coming in, but we are fully staffed. We have not let go anybody. We're busy every day. I realize there's been a lot in the pipeline and a lot of activity, but we still have a lot of new activity. And so I know we'll get through this, and we'd love to be your title company of choice. And we are here all the time for any questions. And I tell you too, I know you don't always have the choice on title, especially if you represent the buyers. But I know Sam as well, we're always here. I have read every prelim from every company. I'm happy to review it, ask me my opinion on, do I see anything unusual? I will never speak on behalf of another title company, but if I see something, I will just share with you, like, hey, I would ask this title officer about item 8 in that prelim or what have you. So again, just happy to earn a spot on your team and answer. You're not expected to know everything there is about title. You have more than enough to know on your contract side of things. So that's what we are here for, to be your title eyes and ears and anything we can assist you with.
Okay, so, and we did have someone ask where our office is located. We actually have 3 locations. Ours is in Escondido, over on La Terraza, the AAA building. Just so you know, we're right there with the AAA building, 800
Yes.
La Terraza. And then we have a Carlsbad location over on Priestley Drive, and then we have Mission Valley.
Yeah, so Mission Valley is where all of our title units, our farming department, customer service is our main office. That is in Mission Valley. Like Sam said, we have escrow branches, Escondido, Carlsbad. We actually have one out in Eastlake. Those are escrow offices. Our corporate office is right out of Santa Ana. So all the policies, product, everything, we call it the campus, and it truly looks like the White House. It's a beautiful campus of employees, but that's where your policies, if there are our claims department, and there are claims. We are an insurance company, so of course there's claims that come up, but I have to say, any time I've ever seen a claim go through, the process is, I want to say, I don't want to say painless. Nobody wants to go through a claim, but it's very hands-on. They don't waste any time. And we, First American, have been around for over 150 years. It started with a family, the last name of Kennedy. Their great-great-grandson is still a part of this. Very much, maybe sounds funny to say such a large corporate company, but very family oriented as far as how they take care of all of us as employees. And we're not going anywhere, even during tough times. Know that, title policy, maybe that's one quick thing. It's a one-time fee that the seller is buying for your buyer, and they will forever, for the time and length that they are in that home, that title policy will cover anything that could come up. Even when they refinance, they are paying their title fee, and a refinance is to pay for the policy for their new lender. It does not change their title policy that they were given when they purchased the home. So it's a one-time fee, and so that's just, and you want to put your buyers in good hands for a company that's going to be around if and when a claim ever came about. So my little spiel for First American.
Great. And I just wanted to note too that in the PDF of the sample prelim that was sent out, and any of you that didn't get it, we'll go ahead and send it over to you. In the back, there is a page, and it's our title policy coverage comparison, and it compares the policies and what they cover. And I love having that with me on me, so you can always go over that with your clients, so that way they kind of know what their coverage is. So when they do get this title insurance, they know what they're, where they're being covered. And then it also has ways to hold title, which is super helpful and beneficial because there's so many different ways, and it goes through each one and the examples, and that way you can kind of like review it. And then when you're working with a client, and not that you should be giving them this more, but at least you kind of have an idea of the different types to hold title, and you can kind of help guide them in a way, even though you're not, technically supposed to tell them. They need to talk with their accountant and whatnot, but and their attorney. But anyways, Kim, do you want to say anything on that?
Nope, just vesting, just like she said, the ways to hold. When they receive their package from escrow, it will provide them with that form of the different choices of how to hold title and what the different coverages and what they mean and the different protections. Again, you or I, we should not give the legal advice of that. You're providing them the information for them to make their own decision, or they can talk with an attorney or their like Sam said, an accountant, but that will be provided to them as far as what the vesting coverages are and the choices that they have.
Yes, and there's also a sample statement of information on the back as well, which is great for you guys to look at. Like Kim said, make sure your clients get that in as soon as possible. We recently had a deal where they waited till the last minute and it extended escrow because there were liens tied to the person. So make sure you get that done. And let's see, I think we have what is this? Sorry, there's a couple questions coming in right now.
Okay.
It says, do we provide, let's see, service, only provide service for San Diego County? Well, we have.
No.
Yeah. Do you want to answer that?
Do you want me to cover that?
Yeah,
sure. Yes, so it doesn't matter. So
they're saying not First American title though, just so you know, like, do we cover more than San Diego County? Not First American.
Yes. I mean, I'm not.
I know it's kind of.
What do you mean?
I'll just answer it. It's we work San Diego County, that's our area, but I mean we do have transactions outside of San Diego. I have clients that do transactions in LA and you know, so we don't, if you have transactions elsewhere, we are happy to help you. We can do those down here in San Diego County, and our San Diego title unit will handle those as well.
Yes, we can open probably, you know, you can have a listing obviously up in Temecula, you know, Riverside County, Orange County, like Sam said, LA County. If we get much further north, then we'd like to refer you to another branch of ours. If it gets out of state, a lot of times we like to refer to another branch because different states use different deeds. What we call a grant deed, some states call a warranty deed. I have an email right now that I saw pop up and somebody was looking for a location in another state or a rep. So we'll put it into our global, find a location in that county where the property is, and we can refer you that way and just put you in touch with. But as far as you and your listings and where we can help you anywhere. Just because we have a territory, you'll see where we're called Team 78. That just identifies, they try to keep us reps in our own little sandbox. So that just shows where Sam and I get to go play along the 78, like I mentioned earlier, Fallbrook, Bonzo, Valley Center, Borrego. We have a lot of the backcountry areas. But it doesn't mean where your listing does not have to be in our territory. Your listing can be anywhere. And it matters where you, the customer, is. If you are in our territory, then you are ours. If you are, let's say you're from La Jolla, we have reps that cover different teams that cover different areas. But so I think I got a little lengthy on the answer, but we're nationwide. We can help you wherever. And if we can't, we'll put you in the hands that can.
Okay, perfect. So we kind of went over a little bit of time. Sorry, guys. Again, we had some technical difficulties with this one. This was our first one, but hopefully when we do the next one, you know, we will be more in sync with the PowerPoint. I know there was a few pages we skipped over, but Kim covered all the main important parts. Those were just mainly question pages, which we got the PDF out to you, and we're happy to also get the PowerPoint out to you if that's something you want to have. So, but thank you all for joining
I think, did I see a question pop up about who covers Riverside County?
Oh, you're right. Thank you. I can't even see anymore.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Who covers Riverside County? Mm-hmm.
We have reps. So again, if you work in our territory and we work with you, we can help you with Riverside County. If you're looking for if you're in Riverside County and you want to rep there, obviously Riverside County is a large county. Patty Sather, S-A-T-H-E-R, she's the rep that covers, I know for sure, Temecula, Murrieta, that area. How far out she branches, I'm not sure, but we do have a Riverside County First American office as well. So they're very strong in that area. So you can always shoot me an email too. I can send you her contact information, but we definitely have reps up in that area. Again, if it's just the property, Sam and I can help you.
Yes, and I did have one question here. It says, what about Corona? I don't know what that was referring to, but we are still here.
The town Corona?
Oh, is that what he was asking? Corona? Oh, got it. I was confused. Sorry.
Well, I'm asking. I mean, that's brought a whole nother meaning into our world a month or so ago.
I know. Well, we'll leave it at maybe Corona area. But also too, just to let everyone know, we do have now that with all the new rules for, when you are showing property, you need booties and gloves and masks. And just to let you know, we do have a ton of booties. We have some hand sanitizers and we have gloves and masks on order. So if you need those things, you can contact Kim or I, and we're happy to drop them off at your door. So let us know. And I think that's it.
Are we good?
Yeah, I think we're good. Thank you, everyone. We really appreciate you joining us. If you need anything, feel free to email us, and we'll get this out to everyone. So thank you.
Okay, and thank you to Lindsay and Shirley and James at SD for inviting us and allowing us to do this presentation for you. Thank you.
Thank you.